Okay. How's everybody? All right, so are we ready to go? Okay, I want to know, don't show your hand, but if it refers to you, then you can say, what is a good thing to say? You can say amen. If you were not here yesterday and you were here today.
Amen.
We do have some people who were not here yesterday. Okay, so if you don't understand some of the things, it's okay. You know, it will become clearer. Okay. For those of you, of course, who were here yesterday, you may not understand it either. So it's okay. Now we did get to rule number 5 yesterday. Okay. Now for those of you who were not here yesterday, rule 5 is the most important thing. You just missed the most important thing. Okay? So we're going to touch on it very quickly, and then we're going to move on because we need to get to rule number 11 today. Okay. So rule 5. What did I say about rule 5? It's the latest lifesaver, right? It's the most important of all the rules. So put a star beside it, circle it, do something about it, memorize it. So what is at the heart of rule 5? The heart of rule 5 is that while you were in consolation previously, or when you're in a space that is relatively neutral in terms of there's not necessarily a lot of uplifting, but there's no kind of sinking in terms of your relationship with the Lord. You're in kind of like a level place. There's not many forces working on you. And consolation, yesterday we talked about, is that general lifting of the spirit. There's a clarifying, there's greater energy in your desire for God. Right? You tend toward goodness, you tend toward more faith, more hope, more love. There's more of this warmth, this energy from the Lord that you can see more clearly that God is over and above everything else. Right? There's an ease in facing difficulty. There's a greater trust in the Lord. It becomes easier. Right? Consolation is that. Desolation, spiritual desolation is the opposite of that, but not only opposite of that, there's this murkiness, there's this lack of ability to hear, to know, and be able to respond to God. There's a lack of a desire in your heart. You seem to tend toward more earthly things, more worldly things, more passing things seems to be lurking around. You know, it seems to be stronger in drawing you into that. Right? So we're saying that when you're in consolation, when you're in a place of neutral, previously you may have made some spiritual proposals. And not just any proposals, but spiritual proposals. Spiritual proposals are disciplines that you take on, or way of life, values that you aim to develop, right? Things that train you to be better, right? So maybe reading more scriptures each day, do some spiritual reading, go to annual retreat, do a pilgrimage, or come to Lenten mission, you know, like we're doing right now. Right? So this is spiritual proposals. He's saying that you make this proposal and then you hit a period of desolation. And Rule 5 says that when you find yourself in spiritual desolation, never in any circumstances change those spiritual discipline that you have previously committed. Okay? So we talked about that already. Now, Rule 6 is a bit of an explanation of what else can we do, right? So Rule 6 is saying that although in desolation, we should not change our first proposals, meaning previous proposals. It is very advantageous to arm ourselves intensely against the desolations itself by more prayer, meditation, upon much examination, and upon extending ourselves in some suitable way of doing penance. Okay? So yesterday I did try to clarify that Rule 5 does not mean that when you are in spiritual desolation, you do nothing, or you change nothing. Right? We're not talking about that. I cannot emphasize that more because again and again I find people either breaking Rule 5 or misinterpreting Rule 5. Okay? It seems to be the common fare, you know. That's what Satan, he knows that we need Rule 5, so he's doing everything to break it. Okay? So Rule 6 is saying that yes, we do not change our spiritual proposals while we are in spiritual desolation, but however, we do need to do something so that we can go against the desolation itself. Okay? Remember going against Adrian Contra? We talked about that yesterday, right? You don't remember. Do you remember? Adrian Contra, right? Right in Rule 1, we have the contrary method, right? So we want to go against it. So we don't look at these particular meanings. Like Ignatius, when you talk about these things, he's not just throwing some big words out there. Oh, well, of course, prayer, meditation, much examination, and penance, Yeah. These are big common words. But he's very particular, very specific in what he meant when he said these things. When you say prayer, it's not just any prayer, but particularly prayer petition. Prayer petition. One of the reality we face is that if we're finding ourselves prone to very particular ways to fall, okay? That's what we call weaknesses. When we have areas, we all know that, right? Every time we go to confession, isn't it true? Is it true that we all have the same list? Not we all have the same list, but we all have our own list, which is the same. Right? Every time you go to confession, it's the same list. You may as well, put it in a frame or something, right? I forgot what yeah, it's right there on the frame. It's the same ones for the last 40 years or whatever, right? So, it is true. We all have those particular things. Why? Because we all have the same pattern, right? Like we fall into a pattern, and we have areas of powerlessness. That's the definition for weakness. Right? Weakness is where you're powerless. So why do we keep falling or responding to our desolation in a particular way that's bad? Well, because we are weak. This is where we're powerless. So prayer is to acknowledge that I am powerless, but God is powerful, and I need to depend on Him. Right? So prayer petition is, God, I am in a place of desolation, help me. Right? Remember yesterday we talked about desolation of all kinds of thoughts and ideas and suggestions and proposals. So I'll just want to hit the potato chip, that potato couch, and just watch YouTube until 3 a.m. or something. Well, you may not propose it that way, but you say, well, watch another show, watch another episode is okay. Right? Or be selfish. Think of number one first. All the other people are wrong anyway. Right? Or don't do anything, it's not going to help anybody. Right? There are all these thoughts, right? And we are weak, we're broken, we're tempted, there's so many ways we know. Right? So when we experience temptation, when we experience all this noise, these suggestions in desolation, St. Ignatius said, first acknowledge your powers, call to God, and throw yourself at His feet. Incidentally, you probably heard about Alcoholics Anonymous, right? AA. You heard about the 12 steps program, right? The first 3 steps was exactly that. The first step is acknowledge that you are powerless. And second step, believe in a higher power. And the third step, surrender yourself to the higher power. pretty Catholic, right? One of the co-founders of AA was a religious nun. Okay? So that's why it's very Christian, very Catholic, very gospel-based. Okay? So prayer or petition, call to God. We are powerless. This whole teaching is not equipping ourselves that I am strong. No. It is to know that I am broken, I'm powerless, God help me. Okay? First means. Second means meditation. Now meditation here doesn't mean that you sit down and start praying in that mode of meditation. But here particularly, St. Ignatius referred to remembering the gospel truths that could help you. Remember also the history of how God has helped you before. Okay? Right? Call to mind the truths of faith, memory of God's goodness. Right? Particularly if we are familiar with scriptures, right? Especially those passages that give you a lot of hope. For example, in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, what does it say? It says that God will not give you a trial that's beyond your power. He will always leave a back door for you to escape. What about that? What about Jeremiah? You're called to God while He's near. You draw near to God, He will draw near to you. Right? So, what about the Psalm? And also St. Paul echoed the same teaching in Romans. Right? If God is for us, who can be against us? Right? These are scriptures that help us when we meditate in times of desolation, when we know the scriptures. Right? But also, looking back to your life, often, when we're in desolation, the darkness, when nothing seems to be going well, when, Father, I've been praying every day for last week, it's like chewing chalk, it's so dry. Right? But then, if you remember, you know what? Last year, I had the same patch of dryness, and that ended. Right? So doesn't that give you a lot of hope? Right? If your previous desolation, you remember that they ended. This one will end too. This one will end too. So meditation is remembering realities, truth, how it should be, what is really going on that you have learned from the past. Right? And then the third means much examination. What is he talking about? Often when we find ourselves in a time of desolation, we tend to react. Right? We tend to just, the frustration comes more readily, the anger, the sorrow, the fears, We tend to just react, it's very raw, and we don't have extra reserve and conscious effort to be more aware. Remember the 3 steps, right? Page 1, the diagram, right? The 3 steps. The first step is being aware, and that's the hardest of 3 steps. Okay? Especially in desolation, our ability to be aware that something is off balance, that ability is compromised. Right? We need to be aware. Right? So we need to step back. Much examination. Kind of look at where does it come in? Right? When did it start? Right? How did it start? Right? And we need to kind of look at the entry point. Remember the example I gave yesterday of this husband and father, right? They came home, right? Toys are everywhere. Wife is not to be seen. Baby is crying. What's going on? And then, if he examined himself, say, wait a second, 2 days ago, same thing there was the same situation. I was calm. How did it start? Right? Much examination. How did it start? Like he may trace back and say, you know what, I remember exactly how it started. Everything was so hunky-dory until I came back from lunch. I got pulled into the office by my boss and got an earful from him. And so unjust, so unfair, and I got so angry, and that's what changed everything. So being able to examine and step back, not to react, coming from a different perspective, what is going on, and to be able to see that, they can be able to resolve that, or at least put it in the light of God, and then that could be taken away, right, dealt with. And then he will be able to deal with his children, his wife, fairly and lovingly. Right? So much examination, very wise instructions. Lastly, suitable penance. Okay? Suitable penance doesn't mean that, I'm going to scourge myself. Right? I'm going to fast for 40 days. That may not help your desolation at all. Some people, we don't realize that spiritual desolation combined with non-spiritual desolation could be a death sentence, Okay, I'm feeling so sick, I feel so distant from the Lord, I'm going to fast for 40 days. Well, you're going to be in the hospital. Not very wise. No, that's not what Ignatius meant. Right? Suitable penance meaning we're going to do something contrary to the temptation, to the suggestions of desolation. For example, you're in a place of desolation. Do you like to pray? Would you like to pray? Right? You need to pray, but you may not want to pray. Right? And so you sit there, you're in desolation, you know for the last few days nothing came out of prayer. Right? So your habit has been praying 15 minutes. Okay? Is 5 minutes into your prayer is worse than ever. Okay? And you want to get up. Now what's wrong with that? Which rule was it breaking? Rule 5, right? But not only that, you should stay good for 15 minutes. What it's suggesting, pseudo-penance, is that, okay, today I'm going to do 17 minutes. Okay? To go against the temptation to cut short, you extend it. Okay? Another example would be that, you've come home, you're very frustrated, you're thinking of, I need some me time on the couch with my favorite potato chips. Okay? Now, pseudo-penance would be what? Don't go there, right? that would be ideal, right? But, you really want some comfort. So what do? Wait is a good suggestion, right? Wait 15 minutes. If after 15 minutes you still want to eat it, have one back. Okay? Instead of the usual 3. Right? So pseudo-penance. I struggle with going on to my treadmill to exercise. Right? So what is pseudo-penance? I don't even want to see, I don't want to think about it, right? So one of the wise priests, he said, well, if you don't want to exercise, at least visit your treadmill. Right? Stand on it for 3 minutes, and after 3 minutes you still don't want to exercise, well, then come back tomorrow. But chances after 3 minutes, you say, wow, what the heck, I'm already standing here. May as well start the machine, right? See, do you see what it means, right? Pseudo-penance, we have to find some ways to go against the bad suggestion from our desolation. Because if we don't do that, it's going to take roots in our heart. It will be harder to remove. It's going to crouch down, it's going to do strongholds, it's going to take roots. It's going to be very hard to remove. Okay? So 4 means, I can talk on this for hours, we have to move on. But something for you to come back to. Okay? Knowing the tools is one thing, actually using them is something else. Okay? So keep in mind, where to go back to, here it is for you. Okay? Alright. So rule number 7 and 8 are very similar, but the wordings are different. It emphasizes different aspects of desolation. In fact, for the rest of the rules, they're all about desolation. Ignatius spent precious little time to talk much about consolation. Why? Because during consolation, everything is so much easier and clearer. You don't need much instructions. Okay? Whereas in desolation, everything is murky, is uncertain. So we need basically what we need is we need to train some spiritual muscle memory. Okay? Remember muscle memory, right? We just had the Winter Olympics. Yeah, when the commentators, what do they say all the time? Oh, he's under tremendous pressure, he's the last man to go up there to perform now, right? He has to rely on his muscle memory. He can't think. If you think, he's going to fail. Remember that, it's constant commentary like that, right? Same thing with our spiritual battle, right? Sometimes when we are in desolation, we can't think. We have to rely on the muscle memory. So that's why we need to have good spiritual discipline and good spiritual knowledge. So rule 7, what does it say about desolation? Now one who is in desolation, consider how the Lord has left him in trial in his natural powers, so that he may resist the various agitations and temptations of the enemy. Okay, let's stop there for now, right? So, someone who is in desolation, consider. Now, consider is in the heart or in the head? In the head, right? Why? Because desolation is compromised in the heart, right? You need to think, right? Consider what? Consider that this is the Lord's trial. Now, what do you think of when you think of the word trial? It's a challenge for what? For you to grow, right? Where does desolation come from again? Who is the author of desolations?
Evil one.
The enemy, right? So you see, it's kind of like you're going to an exam. It's the devil who come up with the exam. Are you going to do good? Tough, right? But you know who is marking? Who is the one marking here? According to St. Ignatius, the Lord, right? The Lord is the one marking, right? So all of a sudden it's really hopeful. Now you still have to do the test. You can't just sit back and go, the Lord is going to be merciful. No, you still have to do the test, right? But the Lord is going to be merciful in marking. Right? There's something to gain from this exam. Right? Otherwise, it's not called trial. It's called trick. Okay? Right? There's nothing to gain here. Right? It's a punishment with pure evil. Right? That's what the devil wants to do. Right? What the enemy wants to do. But no, the Lord is saying that no, it's my trial. It's his test for my trial. Okay? For you. So right away, it's very hopeful. To try us to grow, to test us, to test us to prove what? What does it say there? That you can resist the devil. You can resist his agitations and temptations. Right? So all of a sudden, desolation is not so bad. Right? We are left in our own power. We feel like we are left in our own power, but so that we can prove, or we can stretch ourselves to improve, that we can resist the enemy. And praise the Lord. I know it's Lent, we can say hallelujah, right? So it's great. Since he can resist with the divine help, which always remain with him. So it's not alone. And then he goes on to say, very important, though he does not clearly feel it. Okay, so in desolation, yes, we don't feel the presence of the Lord. We may pray, we may kneel, we may do all kinds of things. We don't feel the Lord is present, but he is there. But we don't feel him, he's here, he's right here, he's doing everything to help us to resist, and we can resist. As 1 Corinthians chapter 10 said, that the Lord will not put us in a trial that is beyond our ability. With his help, we can do all things in him who strengthens us, as in Philippians. Okay? So St. Paul have a lot of insight in this too. Okay? It's a trial. God is looking after us, and we have to trust even when it's dark and we are blind. Okay? We can't see, we can feel he's here. So it's an act of trust, act of faith, right? So, always sufficient grace, always divine providence to stay on track to a God. Okay? So, that's great hope here, right? Now, there's one thing we know. Certain virtues, in fact, all the virtues cannot grow without exercising them. If I don't get on the treadmill, do you think I will be in shape? I'm just thinking about it? No, right? Very flat chance, right? If the Olympians do not exercise, do you think they can win? I don't know if you watch commercials during the Winter Olympics. One of them really caught my eyes on CBC, and it's one of the athletes that said, and she said, it's 1,400 days until the next Olympics. We got to start somewhere. 1,400 days, that's 4 years. That means they never stop. So in some way, we need to kind of train, we need to do things, right? So if you want to grow in patience, you know what's going to happen? If you pray to the Lord, help me to grow in patience. He's going to send you all kinds of irritating personages into your life to make you impatient, or so it seems, right? So that you can trust him, rely on him to resist it, to stay in patience. That's the only way that you can prove that you can grow in that virtue, right? If you want to grow in generosity, and meekness toward others, He's going to send you all kinds of troublemakers, crazy people that get on your nerves. And everyone is going to be vibrating around you, including your loved ones in your family. They're all going crazy and mad and demanding. And the Lord is saying, well, can you prove your meekness and generosity? Right? Now, the Lord again is not here to get us. The Lord is here to help us. Right? So it will end, and you will grow if you call on Him. Right? Remember that, okay? All right. Rule number 8. It's very similar. Let one who is in desolation work to be in patience. I just want to emphasize this word work. The original text uses the word trabaje. And those of you who know Spanish, you know that this word doesn't mean just work, it means labor. And you have to sweat. You know, it's hard work. Right? Trabaje. You know, work to be in patience. That means it's going to take time. Okay? Which is contrary to the vexations which come to him, and let him think that he will soon be consoled. Using the means against such desolations as is said in rule number 6. Okay, so what is the emphasis here is that it takes effort and persistence. Because time seems to slow down when you're in desolation. When you're in desolation, remember the universal negatives? One of them is that it's never going to end. Okay? You will not get out of this tunnel. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. And even if you get out, it will still be dark. Right? This is hopeless. You are hopeless. And those are the words that get to you in desolation. Right? But the truth is that it will end. It will end, as all the other desolations in the past. This one also will end. The Lord will not withhold His consolation beyond our need. Right? He will always come timely with His consolation. Okay? So we need to persist. We need to work hard. We need to work hard on it. Right? Again, it also talks about think that it will soon end. It's not like I don't feel like it's going to end. No. You don't feel anything. Yes. You feel that it's going to last forever. Yes. But think, believe, conjure up with the willpower, it is going to end. Because historically proven that all desolations come to an end. Okay. So you have to kind of will it. It's almost like a cognitive therapy. You tell yourself it's going to end, it's going to end, it's going to end. Okay? Imagine a doctor with 2 patients with exactly the same sickness. Both are, well, the sickness is incurable, but it's not completely incapacitated. And the doctor goes to the first patient, only emphasize the negatives. Okay? Well, we cannot cure you. You will have this sickness the rest of your life. Yeah, you can go home today, but it's going to limit you in some way. Do you think that patient will ever be happy? Well, it's going to be severely compromised at least, right? And they go on the next one as well. Yeah, you got this incurable disease, but you know what? Many people cope with it, you know. At least you can go home today, and you can do most of the normal things. You just need to be a little bit slower. Well, so, you know, seems totally different story, but that's the positive side, right? This patient is going to go home, and it's going to have so much fun. Because, yeah, I'm a little bit limited, but I can still do a lot of things, right? So, cognitively, how we set our mind, okay? And particularly this time, we're actually setting on truth. We're not exaggerating. It will end. It will end. Okay? Right? And you have to work hard. Meanwhile, well, it doesn't seem like it's ending right now. Okay? Trusting always. Right? And then use the means in Rule 6, prayer, meditation, much examination, and then lastly, doing penance, going against what the temptation, what the thoughts that comes from the desolation is trying to suggest to you. Okay? Alright, it's not too hard to understand, right? Rule number 9. You know, it's just kind of throwing concepts at you. I want to get to rule number 11, and then we have time to give you some examples. Okay? Can we do that? All right. Rule number 9 is what we have been longing for. So why would the Lord permit desolation? Remember the scene of Lazarus, already dead for a few days, Jesus came, right? And what did Martha say? Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. So why do you permit this, So Rule 9 explains 3 main reasons Ignatius come up with that why the Lord allows desolation that is really created and engineered by the devil. Okay? Rule number 9. There are 3 principal causes, that is, God's reasons that we find ourselves in desolation. Number 1, because we're tepid, slothful, or negligent of spiritual exercises, and so through our faults, spiritual consolation withdraws from us. Remember rule number 1? Or the diagram, remember, right? At every decision we make, we are either going toward God or we are going toward the enemy. There's no in between. When you don't choose, where do you go? You fall by gravity toward the enemy. Right? So every decision we make, right, we do that. And Rule 1 said that, as we go from mortal sin to mortal sin, right, there's this tugging, there's this biting and stinging from God's Spirit, but then there's this alluring from the evil one. Now, it doesn't need to be wholesale turning toward the enemy that this will happen. This is happening all the time. So even when we're doing relatively okay, we're kind of going to church, we're taking our sacraments, we're coming to retributions, and all that kind of good stuff, we have good spiritual exercises. Or sometimes we flip-flop with a few things. Right? We could easily, go to a conference, or go to confession, or go to retribution, or whatever, something that's really beautiful, wonderful, and then you leave the church and go to the parking lot and someone double park after you. And all the consolation is gone. You're cursing, you just want to break the window of this car, I don't know, something, right? Why? Because, we allow that, right? And the Lord allowed that desolation to come in to shake us up. Say, look, what's going on? Deep down, give me conversion. So the Lord allowing desolation is to show us that, we don't have it all together yet. We have not been vigilant. Right? There's still a lot of pride going on. There's still a lot of that old man or old woman inside. St. Paul talks about that old man still at work, right? And some of you say, no, it's an old woman or old girl or whatever. Right? So we know, there's always more work, but sometimes we're lazy, sometimes we're, indifferent, sometimes we're not, going after it, So the Lord allows us to fall flat on our face, or at least deprive us of consolation, so we realize that, I need to change. Okay, so that's the first reason. Second reason is to try us and to see how much we are and how much we extend ourselves in the service and praise without so much consolation. Okay? So it's kind of like what we just talked about in rule number 7 and 8. Right? It's a trial to prove how much we really love God and not just His consolations. Okay? How would you feel if your friend called you up and say, "Wow, hey, I really want to watch a movie. There's new St. Paul movie coming out next week, but I hate to watch a movie alone. Can you join me?" And you say, "Oh yeah, that's great. I like that movie too." But that's exactly all it is. Right? After the movie, see you later. It's not interested in you. Right? You just want to have a warm body beside you, that it doesn't look so silly. How do you feel? What kind of friend is that? Right? Don't you feel like you're reduced? Right? Imagine if someone is dating and try that on the potential boyfriend or girlfriend. That's not going to go very far. Right? That's not going to go very far. Unfortunately, a lot of couples are like that. It's crazy. Sometimes I talk to these young people and say, so what do you do? Did you do with this girl or this guy? Well, he likes to do that, he likes to do that. I just go and try to accompany him. He doesn't do anything for you? No, he doesn't do anything for you. He's not interested in you. He's just interested in using you. Sometimes we are like that with God. Right? It's kind of like when there's consolation, we say, oh, praise the Lord, my prayer is so good. We just, when our prayers are good, when there's consolation, that means you have not been praying. Right? It's all gifts. You didn't do squat. But you sit down, you're in the third heaven already. You didn't do anything. There's no proof that you love God. Right? We need desolation. If we're still praying to the Lord when we're in desolation, that is kind of like saying, that's kind of like a wife coming home and see her husband sick, and she looks after him, even when it's stinky and difficult, and trying her patience. That's showing love. Not when he's happy and kissing her and blessing her and doing everything for her. That would be easy. She doesn't need to do a whole lot. St. John of the Cross said, do not seek after the consolations of God, but seek after the God of consolations. But we can't prove that until we find ourselves in desolation. So the Lord allows that to show us. In other words, why do we have desolation? It's because God loves us. His desolations in this situation, they are the sweet kisses of Jesus. Now, some saints would say that don't love me so much. You love me too much. St. Teresa of Avila, she traveled extensively, and sometimes she really hit some difficulty in her life. And there's one time she had to travel from one convent to another, and the carriage hit a rock, and she basically got catapulted from the carriage and fell into the mud. And she said, God, if you treat your friends like this, no wonder you have so few friends. So sometimes we could complain, but deep down, the Lord is teaching us, do you love me, or do you just love my candies? Okay? So it's the Lord kind of inviting us, right? The more we are tempted, the more we love by God, desolation overcome is a proof that we are true servants of God, that we're true friends of God. Right? Without desolation, therefore, we would not grow out of a spiritual immaturity. We would not grow out of a spiritual immaturity. Okay? The third is to give us recognition and understanding so that we may interiorly feel that it's not ours to attain or maintain devotion, intense love, tears, or any other spiritual consolation. What it's saying here is that consolation is pure gift. You cannot engineer it to happen, and you cannot artificially hold on to it. Now, you could lose it by acting foolishly. We're going to get to that in the next group. Okay? But if we're doing all the right things, it will still go when it's time to go. Okay? And even when you're doing all the right things, it may not come. It's not up to us. God's way of keeping us rooted in humility. Okay? It's all grace. It's gift from God. He is in control, we're not. Okay? He is the author of it. He has the right to give and take it as He pleases. And an imagery of that would be St. Teresa of Lisieux in her autobiography, The Story of a Soul. One of the parable they made, that the way she described her relationship with Jesus is that Jesus is the infant child and she's the ball. And she said, I'm perfectly content if Jesus come and play with me, or He throw me away and leave me in the corner indefinitely. It's completely up to Him. I'll be perfectly happy being His ball. That's humility. Because that's who we are. We are creatures. And He's God. All we need to do is that we trust that He's God and He loves us. And He knows what He's doing. Can you imagine someone who can control when to have consolation and when not to have consolation? The pride that arises from that? Oh, it would be so awful. Oh, you are not in consolation. You know what? There's just something wrong with you because I always have consolation. I'm doing all the right exercises. You have been lazy. Can you imagine if that is a formula to maintain and extend consolation? That would be exactly. No one should be in desolation then. Okay? So, but that's not right. That's not healthy. That's not reality at all. Right? So, that to keep us humble, keep us stick to close to Jesus. Is that making sense? Okay. I know it's kind of like information overload. We'll come to the end of it. You know, I know you're in desolation. Maybe not spiritual desolation, but think that it will soon end. It will soon make sense. Rule number 10 is the only rule that talks about exclusively consolation, but even in talking about consolation, is in preparing us for desolation. Okay. Let the one who is in consolation think how he will conduct himself in the desolation which is to come after, taking new strength for that time. Okay? Every consolation will be followed by, sooner or later, some desolation. The only place where there will be continuous that consolation is when you see God face to face in heaven. That doesn't mean that we need to be downcast, cynical, and pessimistic, even when there's consolation. And sometimes we could be like that. Well, consolation, consolation, but it's going to end. It's going to end, and desolation. No, enjoy it. Because what is in consolation? Clarity, ease, strength, insights. You're going to be able to see what God wants to do. When we will hear His voice more clearly, you have a greater desire to love Him and serve Him and organize your life. Now, this rule turns out to be quite important because, frankly, I think a lot of us, including myself, are not using our time of consolation wisely. You're not. Okay? Remember the story of Joseph the patriarch? How he interpreted the dream of Pharaoh? What was the dream? Do you remember? There were like 7 cows. They are fat or thin? 7 really fat cows, right? And then there are 7 really thin cows came out. And they ate the 7 fat cows and they remained thin. Do you remember that dream? Okay. It's in the Old Testament. Okay. It's in Genesis, just so you know. Okay. I don't remember which chapter. So and then you interpret that, well, that means there's 7 years of great harvest and 7 years of great famine. So what did he propose to Pharaoh? Store up for the coming famine. That's exactly rule 10. Store up the graces, store up the resolve, store up the muscle memory. Remember the muscle memory? Okay? The spiritual muscle memory, that's rule 10. When it's easy, when it's bright, when it's clear, when you're close to God, when prayer comes easy, maybe we need to even change our schedule when we're in spiritual consolation. What should we do more? What do you think? Pray more. Maybe read the Bible more. But not excessively more, in balance, right? But really hold on to it, drink tea from the fountain when you're in consolation. Right? Don't waste it. How sometimes we waste it, we squander it so quickly. Like, I remember when I find myself, every time I go to confession, there's so much freedom, anyone can experience that, Especially you have some serious sins, you go to confession, you're kind of ashamed, you go to confession, oh, it's all cleaned up. Otherwise, I told you yesterday, right, I struggle with that every Friday. Say, I don't want to go to confession, I need to go to confession, I don't want to go to confession, it's the same priest. Right? And then Saturday, I realized I have to go. Because why? I was in the choir. I had to sing that night. It would be very obvious for everybody if I am in the choir and I don't receive communion. Talking about imperfect contrition, right? It's all about pride, right? So I said, okay, I need to go to confession. And Saturday morning I went to confession, and the first thing out of confessional, I said, what an idiot I was. I should have gone yesterday. I feel so good, right? So much freedom, but we can abuse that freedom. Right? Consolation, we can abuse the consolation. Oh, it's so close to God. I feel God around me. I don't need to pray. Oh, God will understand. We squander. No, we're going to intensify it. We're going to hold on to it. We're going to spend the time. We're going to sit tight. Jesus, I don't know. Jesus, what do I need to change? What things I need to add? What things I need to remove in my schedule? What things are there right now that are wasting my time? It's not contributing to any benefit to anybody. Remove them. What should I replace it with? Right? Maybe spending time helping those who are lonely. Maybe spending time volunteering where there's grave needs. Maybe spending an extra hour during the week in prayer. Right? Something. We'll be more involved in a particular group in the church. Those are things we need to focus on. If we don't do it, when we fall into desolation, we will find ourselves worse off, and all the benefits during that time of consolation will be wiped out and worse. Why? Because during desolation, one of the accusations that comes to us is that all the previous consolation were imaginary. If we are not making good usage of our consolation, then indeed that will be fulfilled. Right? You look back, oh yeah, all my consolations were wasted. Maybe I imagined that. Right? But if we stock up in our consolation, then that lie will not wash. Right? It wouldn't fly. You say, wait a second, no, my consolation was very fruitful. Right? Because I did that, I can see on my calendar, there's a record of that. It's important also during consolation maybe to take down some notes. I remember one of my first spiritual directors, I experienced some great consolation. I forgot what it was. Maybe I was visiting a particular community and really benefited from the vocation retreat. And the first thing he said, you have to write this down. Remember, in desolation, one of the means to fight against it is meditation, right, on spiritual truth, but also looking back at previous desolation, how we get out of it. But also previous consolation, that they are real. So writing them down will help us. Okay? Consolation. Okay? Now, Father Timothy Gallagher has come up with his own list, okay, of means or things to do during consolation that are particularly useful, he found, against desolation. So these are on top of what I just told you. Okay? So possible means, and you have that in your list. And you see that this is basically regurgitation, repackaging of rule number 5 to 9. Okay? The first one is pray or petition. To ask for help for strength in future desolation. That's rule number 6. Right? First means. Okay? So, if we find it difficult to do that in desolation, well, why don't you train up your muscle memory while you are in consolation? Right? If we have a habitual way of asking for help from God, right, we may remember it in our spirit, then even when in desolation we are very confused, we will respond with that muscle memory. Okay? Second means, again, is from Rule 6, meditating on truth that will sustain us during spiritual desolation. Right? Again, if we can't find ourselves reading the Bible in desolation to get to remember some scriptural truth, or maybe in consolation, we need to store up spiritual truths and Bible verses, and highlight them or write them up in one page. I say, knowing that, I tend to have struggled with fear. So write down all the statements in the Bible that we can find about fear. Right? Do not be afraid. The Lord is near you. He will strengthen you. You pray to Him, He will come to you. All these things that come. That come in handy when we're in desolation. Right? The third means consideration of the value of spiritual desolation for growth. Right? We talk about that in rule number 7. It's a trial, right? It's a trial for growth. And rule number 9, the second reason of desolation, right? It's those trying us to prove that we love God, and it's for us to grow deeper in trust, deeper in relationship with Him. Okay? So strengthen that memory, strengthen that belief, strengthen that trust will help us when we are no longer as clear in our mind. Okay? D, reflection on past personal growth through spiritual desolation. So maybe, again, it's the time to write down, It's not as easy for us to write down things in desolation. In consolation, it's easier for us to write down. So how did the Lord get me out of desolation before? See, if you have a book by your bedside, recording all the ways the Lord rescued you from previous desolation. The next time you find yourself in desolation, if you open that book, do you think it's going to help you? Yeah, it's going to be like a gold mine. Right? You will look through those lies so much more quicker. Okay? E, resolution to make no changes in terms of spiritual desolation. Which rule is that? Okay, I only heard 3 people. What rule is that? Okay, see? Now we're to kind of, because of desolation, we got confused. We will lose our way in desolation if we're not training up, again, our spiritual muscle memory. Okay, maybe you can write that with that spiritual muscle memory. That's what you do in consolation. Train it up, and then easier for you. It becomes a habit, it becomes second nature to you. Okay? Number 6, review of this Ignatian point. Now, I would bet, if you don't do that, I don't have to wait till next year when if I come. Right? You will not remember that. Okay? Why? Because the enemy doesn't want you to remember them. Right? So you're going to distort them, and so on and so forth. So what do you need to do? You need to review them regularly. Okay? So you need to become second nature to you again. Consolation is the best time to do that. Number 7, planning for specific situations of spiritual desolations. Now, frankly, my friends, we all know buttons. We all know when which buttons is pushed, we're going to turn 180. We all know that. We know the very specifics of our spiritual eccentricities or whatever, peculiarities. We're all kind of a little bit abnormal. Okay? Yeah, we're all kind of not okay. It's okay. We're all kind of odd. Right? So we need to plan for that. Right? If you are lonely, you come into an empty house, you're going to binge on alcohol, you know that. You need to plan, especially when things are good in consolation, how to make that very, very difficult. And what do we replace it with? If you know when you're driving and someone cut you off, that you are going to turn very unchristian. You know that because it's happening every day. Well, before it happens, when you're in a good space, you need to plan how to counteract that. That's that simple. Is that making sense? But there's a lot of work to do, right? Yeah. So, mark up rule number 10. If you find yourself in consolation tonight, you got work to do before tomorrow. Right? Maybe spend 15 minutes even just to what are some things I can do, to prepare, because you may not have consolation tomorrow. Of course, it may come tomorrow instead, but that's, we need to do our homework. We don't do it no one will keep falling, in the same way, same pattern every day. Okay? Okay, we're going to move into Rule 11. Rule 11 is a summary of everything we said so far. Okay? This is the last rule that St. Ignatius has concerning consolation and desolation. Okay? The last three are about something else. Okay? So rule number 11 is nothing new. That one who is in consolation seek to humble himself and lower himself as much as he can, thinking of how little is capable of in times of desolation without such grace or consolation. Okay? What is that? That's rule number 9, reason number 3. Okay? For desolation. Consolation is completely a gift, we have no control. Okay? And that those who are in desolation, on the contrary, think that he can do much with God's sufficient grace to resist all his enemies, taking strength in his Creator and Lord. And that's rule 7 and 8. Okay? Put together differently. What does it really say? Okay? This is the image of someone who is mature in discerning. Okay? This is a mature Christian. We talk about consolation and desolation that forces, influences that encroach on our heart. Well, maybe encroach is not the right description for consolations. But this is different conditions that affect our heart. But even that, really, what this rule is saying is that it doesn't dictate our heart. Okay? This is just external stimuli. It's just the ambience around our heart. Deep down, we can remain faithful to the Lord. We can remain small and trusting in God. Okay? So the consolation will not be turned into something that puffs us up into pride. No, we are powerless. God is powerful. I be small and trust in Him. And soak up His grace as much as possible to be trained, to allow God to train me during this time. In desolation, that's not the whole picture. This is just the background where I find myself in. What is really going on deep down is that God is here. I can't see Him, I can't feel Him, but I can trust He's right here. You see, that's a stability inside. So that consolation or desolation, someone who lives by Rule 11 is someone, therefore, all the time can act on God's voice. All the time. Okay? Because he's balanced inside, he's humble inside, he's relying solely on God inside. An image of that would be that story of the disciples in the boat, and Jesus was asleep. Remember that story? Yeah, they were in the Sea of Galilee, and the storm picked up, and they were tossed and turned, and then the water got into the boat. And they were so afraid, came to Jesus, Master, are you still sleeping? We're dying. And hint, aren't you supposed to do something? To earn your bread, to be our master, you know. And Jesus got up, peace. He said, why don't you don't? Even better picture, remember, in the Gospel of Matthew, after the 5 loaves and 2 fish, the multiplication of bread, disciples were again in the boat on the sea. Jesus went up to pray, and then he came back down and walked on water. Right? And there was a head wind, so there's a bit of a storm going on. And Peter, the only version in the Gospel of Matthew, Peter said, if you are the Lord, command me to walk toward you. Right? You remember that story? And Jesus said, come. And Peter was walking. There's a storm, there's a wind going on, but he's walking on water so long as he keeps his gaze on Jesus. Okay? But as soon as he starts thinking, oh, there's a wind, there's a storm, he starts sinking. The storm could be raging, the desolation could be raging, the temptation, even the temptation when it comes to time of consolation could be around us. But we can walk on water be still if we fix our gaze on Jesus. That's Rule 11. And that, in a nutshell, is the entire teaching of that diagram, right, that I gave you yesterday, right at the beginning, before we start Rule 1. Right? God, the enemy, really be aware. Be aware that I am small. God is here, I don't need to react just yet. There may be desolation, consolation going on, there may be all kinds of things going on, there may be all kinds of temptations going on, right? When something is not quite right, am I aware? Am I aware? And I understand what it is. Consolation, desolation. I accept this, I reject that. Always staying small inside and trusting in the Lord. Okay, so ready for some examples? Okay, because we do need to kind of, it's one thing to kind of read a book. You say, oh yeah, I get all the points, right? You probably had it in, maybe more in high school or university exams, right? You say, well, okay, I got all this, no problem. And then you go in there, and they decided to give you problem-solving questions, right? You may have memorized all the formulas, but, how is it going to apply to this problem? I don't know. You can read all kinds of books. But if it is not applicable, or we don't know how to apply it, it's as good as we haven't read them. Right? So we need to kind of be able to kind of put it down at the practical level. So let's pick a name. Are there any author here? You better speak up because I'm going to pick on author. Okay, so yeah? You author? Okay, can I pick another name then? Okay, one more of you have a name here. Do you have a Barbara here? We have a Barbara there. I did pick some trickier name. What about Danny? No Danny? Okay, well, Danny it is then. Okay, Danny is a young man. He grew up in St. Joseph, Loyola. And he grew up in a Catholic family, always go to church, and he was he was an altar server for years. And all his life, he thought he was a good Catholic, go to Catholic school, did pretty well there, involved in the church. And of course, just like me, he never needed to choose to go to church. He always went with the family until he went to university, and realizing that it's not so simple. It's not so simple. Now he has to choose to go to church, and he has to make new friends because he don't have Catholic friends around him. Okay? And then, of course, he's being away from Oshawa, because he decided to go to, let's just say he go to McMaster, okay? Something neutral, right? Because I didn't go to McMaster. Okay. So he went to McMaster. Well, obviously it's a long travel, right? So he probably stayed here. He got into the dormitory. And living in the dormitory is a lot of temptations. You have no good Catholic friends around him. And very quickly you find prayer is difficult. Okay? There's darkness there. It's very tempting. There's a lot of beautiful girls around. He's kind of thinking that, all these other guys are not Catholic. They can kind of have parties and all that, Why would God make it so difficult that I can't enjoy it like they can? What kind of state he's in? Consolation, desolation? Desolation. Beginning maybe with non-spiritual desolation, right? But then he began to complain to the Lord, feeling God is distant, it's hard for him to pray. That's definitely some form of spiritual desolation, right? And what was going on also, right? There's the voice of desolation. Right? It's kind of the voice of the serpents to Eve, right? Did God tell you you cannot eat any of the fruits of the garden? Right? So you can just imagine the temptation, the voice that comes to him, right? Well, did God say you're going to have some fun? Right? Isn't that sometimes that how it begins, like very innocent? So no, God allows us to have healthy fun. Well, this is healthy, you're not getting drunk, you just have a couple of drinks, and stay up until 2 a.m. Everybody's doing that. You know how that precipitates, eh? But meanwhile, there's this kind of sadness, right? There's tugging in there, right? Because there's the voice saying, no, don't do it. He said, why not? It's not really breaking any of the commandments, is it? Yeah. well, maybe I can have some fun, meet some girls, it's not like I'm committing the sixth commandment right away. How the mind works, eh? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with some dancing and all that, right? Yeah, again, always begin with something very innocent. But you can tell, and then the conscience is stinking and biting because it's considering all these things. Doesn't need to go all the way. Right? There's desolation. There's the stinging there, that biting there. And then you have to make a choice whether to take it as a voice from a good doctor or someone who is very harsh. Right? Okay? So then he just raised a desolation. Of course, he would find himself being tempted. And let's just say that unfortunately he fell a couple of times and he went to these parties and didn't commit any serious sins. Okay? But he stayed up. And of course, when do they have their parties? Friday night and Saturday night. Do you think you'll be able to wake up early for Sunday nights? After you stay out until 3 a.m., 2 nights in a row? And meanwhile, you haven't done any homework since Thursday. Right? So all of a sudden you found, Sunday looks very, very much like a work day. Now, how many times your kids, or yourself, would say that, I cannot go to church because I got too much work. You see how that comes from, right? That's how it comes in desolation, confusion. Darkness, distant from God, all kinds of crazy thoughts. Right? And what happens if he doesn't go to church? Which rule does he break? Going to church is a spiritual discipline, isn't it? Which rule is he breaking? It's in desolation. Number 5. Right? Do you see how easy it is? Right? How easy it is. Right? So boom, all of a sudden something very innocent, just staying up and having a couple of drinks and dancing, and something that's very tempting is kind of dancing with an affection for sin not yet committed that you made. Right? That could be precipitated in something very serious because it was keep going to Mass, already beginning to rationalize and justify for himself. I got a lot of work, I have a project to hand on Monday. He wouldn't start thinking that, I shouldn't have done all that. Right? He's thinking that, why do I have to go to Mass? Well, God is forgiving. Maybe I go to confession and then I go to Mass next time. But he didn't see this as being a trap. Right? And then from one small things, one mortal sin, when it opens up, Rule 1 says, mortal sin to mortal sin. How? By proposing apparent pleasures that he imagined. Okay? He would imagine, maybe I can get away with it this time. Maybe, I'm only 18, I only need to sleep 2 hours. A lot of young people are telling you that today. Right? A lot of young people, they did a study that the average time now of a lot of young people, the time they go to bed is 2, 3 a.m. Oh my gosh, That's when I wake up from my first cycle. And I have to go to the washroom, But, that's how it is. And they lie to themselves is that I only need 4 hours. It's not true. It's not true. So it becomes a cycle. You miss one week, went back the next week, miss another week, miss 2 weeks, and then came back, and then you miss 3 weeks. It's getting worse. And once you do that, it engender more and more sins. Okay? Now, later on, he saw in the church, there's a poster saying that student retreats. So he said, you know what, I've really been a rut, not being honest with the Lord, really doing poorly. See, again, how the Lord comes in, He wouldn't think of going to a retreat when he's in that state. He might know that he needs something, but boom, the Lord allowed him to see that poster. So he went to that retreat, all washed up, all recharged, experienced deep conversion. And he also met a lot of Catholic friends on campus who are, similarly maybe struggling with various temptations, but they find that, if they hang out together, they can support one another. If they pray together, they can also have fun together. Yes, they also stay up a little bit, not as much, and, can have a glass of beer or whatever, they can have fun, they can watch a movie, and maybe sing karaoke or just some video games, I don't know. Now university stuff, or maybe play a board game, that seems to be a big thing now, right? And I said, we still go to bed at 11 because we're all going to church tomorrow. Okay, well, that's great, So he experienced that, right? And then he found himself, of course, the temptation coming back, right? Temptation coming back. But then he learned Rufi by the time, right? So he said, no, I'm still going to pray, I'm still going to church. If I fall, I'm going to confession right away. And he learned all that during his honeymoon with the Lord. Right? Which rule is that? The only rule that talks about consolation. Rule number 10. Right? You have to store up for the time of desolation. Right? So during that retreat, during the subsequent weeks, he was meeting up with these good Catholic friends who are also growing, trying to grow with him together. Their attention, I try these, we have to keep praying, we have to keep going to Mass, we have to keep going to confession, no matter how embarrassing it may be. We have to keep sharing about what's going on even when we don't feel like, praying, doing anything at all, So we learn all that during that time of consolation. We said, well, this is good stuff, if I had this, I would have never fallen. so that was that, Great stuff. So what happened, of course, down the road is other temptations. Other temptations, it's really finding it very hard, it's kind of disheartening. How come I'm doing all this stuff? These temptations keep coming, these desolations, so often, so prolonged. What would be your advice for you? Pray. What kind of pray? Petition. Did you cry out to the Lord? What else? Meditation, well, you talk about Rule 6, right? So the 4 meanings of Rule 6. Okay. What else can we tell you? He's complaining. It seems to be, it doesn't seem to end. It's so dark, every time I go into it, it just feels so sad. It will end. Right? You have to remind yourself, wait, you're having desolation how often? Well, every 2 weeks. Well, that means it ended before I started again in 2 weeks, right? So, yeah. How did it end? Well, when I go to confession. Well, that's not too bad, then. That it will end. Maybe every time you have desolation, you need to pray more, you need to spend time with the Lord. It doesn't need to wait till you go to confession. Maybe, did you try adoration? Right? Sitting there before Jesus, seeing, Jesus right there. A lot of young people now find it very, very helpful. Just sitting there looking at Jesus and let Jesus look at them. Like basking, if you may, getting a suntan, S-O-N, suntan. Right? From the Son of God, right? So, I said, maybe I can try that. Right? And what else can you tell him is complaining? Why do I have to have these desolations? It's for your growth. It's for your growth. And also for you to appreciate consolation more when it comes. Right? So you see, it's very practical from day in, day out. Right? We can apply that for mundane things at home as well, How many of you like to do chores? I can hear that, Remember I mentioned yesterday, right? I think I did mention it yesterday. The number 1 killer of marriages after 5 years is chores. Right? Because we think it's desolation. It is desolation. Good. But we don't have to be ashamed about that desolation, right? Yeah, we don't need to be ashamed about that desolation. See, if we treat it as something to avoid or to quickly get over with, we treat it as an obstacle, as an enemy, then we're not going to learn anything. right? We're not going to learn anything. Right? But we treat it as something to prove our love for God. In this case, it would be proving your love for your family and your spouse and your parents and your children. Right? You see how that's going to change just doing chores. I remember, I don't even know who taught me, or maybe it's the grace of consolation. I remember when I was in high school, we all have assigned chores. See, my parents being Chinese, they're very wise. They know we're not going to do it. You know what they come up with? You couldn't believe it. They come up with a chart. Okay? Washing dishes, $5. Mowing the lawn, $10. First responder to snowfall, 15. We still didn't do it. Especially after we started making money from our part-time jobs. Right? Especially my older siblings. Because I never took on a part-time job during those years. They did. Said, oh, $5, okay. See you later. So I ended up doing most of the dishwashing. Okay. Now, initially, it could be a bit about the money, but then I realized that, no, I should be participating in the duties of the family. So I started praying, for my family members who will be using this dish. It's amazing. It's amazing how fast you finish it. Right? And I started kind of praying for the hungry people, somewhere in the world. Praying for those who are homeless. They don't even have a plate. Forget about food. Right? And so I said, I pray that, by my little sacrifice, they may have their hunger satisfied. We can bestow something on that, taking on that humility, taking on that little spiritual practice, when otherwise it seems to be all darkness, all drudgery, all so much undesirable. But we have to do something. You see how it changes when we look at desolation as an opportunity, not as a threat, not as a weakness, but as an opportunity. And as an opportunity to do what? To allow God to come in. And that's the wisdom of discernment. That's the wisdom of discernment. And we have a choice. We have a choice to reject the suggestions of desolation. We have a choice to even usher in the light of God, even when we are in darkness. If we choose to do so. Okay? So you can choose that. You have the power to choose that with God's divine help, with God's divine grace. Right? So it's hopeful, right? Amen? Amen. Okay, there you go. Should I go on or should I let you go home? One more. It is 9:02 right now, okay? So, one more example, and here I want to kind of introduce a little bit of some of the other concepts that is not here. Discernment, often we think of big decisions. Okay? So, given this teaching so far, we have enough tool for us to construct, some sort of procedure for discerning something more serious. Okay? We have enough for us to construct that. One of the things we have to remember, therefore, is that making big discernment, this is a preamble, this is very important. It's not like we're not discerning, all of a sudden, boom, we can just go into discernment mode. Discernment is a lifestyle. Okay? It's a lifestyle. Remember, there's a constant battle between God and the enemy. And whether or not we engage in this battle, we are in this battle. Even by not choosing to fight, we are making a decision to fall. Okay? So it is an ongoing thing. We don't just kind of switch into discernment from not discerning. You will never be able to discern effectively if you're not living a lifestyle of discernment all the time. All the time. Right? You say, well, that means we cannot take a vacation from God? No. Sorry, buddy. Right? Vacation is all piled up in heaven. We don't take a break from discernment. We don't take a break from choosing God. We don't take a break from conversion. We don't take a break from rejecting sin and choosing God. Right? The moment we stop, we fall. Okay? It's as simple as that. We need to be vigilant all the time. Okay? But it could be a lot of fun. It could be a lot of fun. Now, choosing in a discernment, making a decision, at the heart of that is not about knowing clearly, absolutely clearly God's will. I say it again, discernment is not about knowing clearly, absolutely God's will. In fact, in most cases, it is impossible. Okay? Because that will leave us no room for faith. Okay? If we can figure it all out mathematically, there's no room to trust God. And at the heart of discernment, therefore, is, first of all, is that we need to examine ourselves whether or not we are fixing our gaze on the first principle and foundation. Are we glorifying God? Are we not attached to health, to long life, to honor, to riches? Okay? Or are we more attached to achieving God's purpose? Okay? All the others we need to be different. And that what we're trying to achieve is that we try to be as honest, as sincere, as self-knowing as possible. Okay? Now, this doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, maybe for some of you. That's okay. So, in a nutshell, it's like, well, a young man is discerning priesthood, right? Well, he has to be very honest. Why? Because in some part of the world, going to priesthood could be an escape from poverty. It's very hard for young men in a very poor country to have an indifferent discernment and a clarity of honesty in that particular area. But even being honest in knowing that I'm not sure is a big step forward. Okay? So a young man going to priesthood, even when everything seems to be clear, he can only be as clear as he is honestly aware. I think I honestly really want to serve God. I honestly think that this is the best way. That's about the best he can do. He cannot say that I know for sure God wants me to be a priest. That's impossible sometimes, most of the times. I would say 99% of the time. Impossible. Okay. So it's not about that. Okay. Knowing that it's about serving God, it is therefore not possible to discern between a good thing and a bad thing. Right? You cannot discern whether or not to bless or to curse. Okay? It's always between two good things. You just don't know which one is God's thing for you. Okay? Marriage is good, priesthood is good. If someone comes to priesthood because I will not make a good husband because I don't like women, well, then you shouldn't be a priest either. Because 90% of the time, it's the woman you're going to be dealing with in the church. You're going to have a very obscure and eccentric way to deal with women. It's going to hurt the women around you. Right? It's not good. It's going to be very bad for you. Right? Someone who is not able to serve selflessly also shouldn't get married. Right? So you see, it's not avoiding something, right? So you realize that. Another thing is that you cannot discern, therefore, between committing or not committing a moral wrong, right? For example, whether or not to commit abortion could not be a discernment, because it's always wrong. You don't discern the abortion. Abortion is already been discerned. Right? It's rather not accepting. Okay? The teachings of the church. Of course, at the beginning, sometimes we're not sure. We don't know if this is wrong. So we need to discern it, and the discernment will bring it to clarity. As soon as we know this is wrong, this is objectively wrong, this is morally wrong, well, the discernment is finished. Okay? And discernment is exactly going through the same process as normal discernment. You need to be aware, you need to understand it, and you need to choose. Except when you make a serious decision, that cycle will be long, many times, for a period of time until it comes to the point of decision. I'll give you an example. Being aware also taking to being aware of the factual reality of what you're discerning and the interior state of how you perceive, how you enter into that choice. A man who's discerning between married life and going to the seminary, right? In some way, he cannot discern. He can only discern whether or not to go to the seminary or not go to the seminary. Right? He cannot discern between going to the seminary and getting married. Why? Because you cannot discern getting married without already dating. And you shouldn't be discerning about seminary if you're dating. Okay? At least you need to tell your significant others that, you know what, I really found that I need to discern this. Can we take a break? You may get a slap on the face. Or you can get someone who really interested in you. Right? Maybe selfishly say, Lord, tell him that he's not a priest. Okay? Bring him back. You never know, right? So you have to be aware, what is the objective reality. Like a lot of women came to me and said, well, Father, I'm discerning about married life. So why? He said, well, I love babies. Well, you don't need to be married to care for babies. A lot of nuns will care for babies. So what else? What is that? And I asked him. He said, well, are you dating? Do you have any close friends that is male? No. Well, maybe you need to start out with that first. Right? Be able to build a friendship with someone of the opposite sex. You need that data. You need to know if you can stand someone so completely different. There's no greater difference between two people than between a man and a woman. If you cannot have meaningful relationship with someone of the opposite sex, you cannot even begin to discern about married life. Right? You need to at least understand something about the opposite sex. Right? And say, oh, I have to spend a whole life with you. Maybe it's not such a great idea after all. Or whatever, right? And some young men come to me, Father, I've been thinking about priesthood for 2 years. I said, what have you done about it? Why not be praying? Have you talked to a priest? Have you go to a seminary? Have you go to a vocation retreat? Have you actually talked to your parish pastor and asked if you can see the rectory and maybe stay over in the summer for a week or two and help with some projects meanwhile? I said, oh, I never thought about that. Well, you need that so you know what to do. Frankly, I have young men who come to me and say, Father, I wonder what you do for Monday and Friday. You've got nothing to do, right? I only see you on Saturday and Sunday. Well, yeah, you're definitely not ready for discerning priesthood because you don't know what we do. Right? So we need data, we need to be aware of the factual reality. Right? And then we need to be aware of our interior reality, especially the consolations and desolations that things by exposing to the factual reality what they bring us. Right? So some people, when they go to the seminary, there are all kinds of experiences, all kinds of consolation, but they not be spiritual consolation. It could be all kinds of other kind of consolations. Oh, the summer is so beautiful. I like the marbles, I like beautiful chapel, I like the singing and chanting. Well, what about the spiritual aspect? Does it elevate your mind to God? Do you feel close to God? Do you feel lighter? Do you still feel that deeper burning urge? And when you go back to your parish, when you serve others in your ministry, do you feel that you have a greater compassion, a greater openness? You want to kind of throw yourself, give yourself away in service in that way, in the context of what you experience in the seminary, in the context of what you have seen, how the priests live, how the priests struggle with the possible loneliness in their life? These are all the data that kind of have to be aware and understand where they're coming from. And some of the rejections, some of the kickbacks, some of the ideas that kind of service from your heart, and be honest and sincere where they're coming from. And then you can make a choice. Okay, I think I want more. No, I think I need to reject this attachment. And then reiterate. Now obviously I cannot give you an example so complete, right? Because each particular discernment, you can see there's a lot of subjective and objective intersection. Okay? So, but it gives you a picture, right? Okay. But we have to end. Because otherwise, we would not have a good sleep, and you don't want to come back tomorrow? Okay? All right. And you got homework to do. You're doing consolation, remember? Okay. Train your spiritual muscle, right? So, glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. So I'm faithful, right before 9:15. I let you go. Now, once again, if you have not picked up the envelope yesterday, they're outside, they're for fundraising. I just want to say a few things about that. Please do write your name and your information on the envelope. You can put it in cash, or you want to go home and write a check, or you can use credit card and get some, I don't know, some 1% back or whatever, or your allowance. That's fine. We have different ways to do that. If you're not coming back tomorrow, there's a basket in the back. Okay? But tomorrow we're going to take up the collection in some way. Okay? So just remember to bring it tomorrow. Okay? So God bless you. It's my joy to be here. I hope it's been beneficial to you all so far. Okay?